Welcome to OAC Vancouver's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We believe that Jesus is needed and relevant for people in Vancouver today. The message of God's love and promise of wholeness was destined to be experienced within a faith community that worships, studies scripture, and prays together. We warmly welcome you to journey with us towards greater connection, purpose, and peace. We'll be sharing our recorded services and conversations with health and wellness experts. Enjoy.
Hi, thanks for joining the OAC Vancouver podcast. Today we're excited because we have two guests, Carolina and Thomas. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
So what did you both eat for breakfast?
I had cereal with milk this morning.
I had coffee and cinnamon toast. My breakfasts are usually coffee. It's the center with some sort of side. However, when we're traveling, I tend to go all out.
Yeah, we try to eat a healthier breakfast when we're out, but when we're our own, sometimes I don't even have breakfast. I'm very basic, like cereal and milk, and that's it. Or I don't have breakfast at all. So not a good habit, but yeah.
I think I do really well in like France, where the breakfast is like coffee and croissant or something.
Probably. Yeah.
How did you guys meet?
Sure. So we met in first year criminology class at KPU University. And that was back, would have been 2014 in January. This was one of the earliest classes I took. It was actually the only class I took that was 8 a.m. Yeah, and as soon as I arrived to class, I think I might have been actually early. I saw Carolina. She got there before me. She was like in the front or towards the front, and I was kind of at the back. But somehow we started talking like right away, pretty much. And I found that really comforting. Not really many other people were willing to engage like that. So it was kind of nice just to have somebody to chat to in the morning like that.
Yeah. And ironically, he's a philosophy major and I'm a psych major. And so we met in a class that was neither of our majors. So I find that very God just kind of planting the seed for our relationship. So yeah, and like he said, I took early classes, but that was probably one of the rare ones of the morning for me too.
So can you both tell me about your backgrounds and where you grew up?
So for myself, I was born and raised in the Adventist church. A little backstory about that with my mom. She was actually Catholic in Ecuador, which is where my mom is from. And in context, South America. And so she actually was going to be a nun. And so she kind of felt in her heart that wasn't her calling. So when she immigrated to Canada, to Toronto, where I was born, she immediately got in touch with an Adventist pastor, and they actually started a church from scratch. So they built a church in Toronto, and she was the leader for the youth, every leader that you could think about. She was just always there. So basically, since birth, I was in the church, and yeah.
So for myself, I grew up in Prince George, smaller town up north there. And I lived there for most of my 22 years. I had a pretty tough upbringing. I eventually thought it best to just leave my mom's house when I was about 22, 23. And I just kind of went on my own to the Lower Mainland, which I'm not sure if that was the best idea, but I definitely learned a lot from it and grew a lot from it. And yeah, so that's I didn't grow up in the church at all. Not really any of my family is religious. But what's interesting is what sort of provoked my interest in God was it was a philosophy class I was taking. I don't remember exactly which one. It might have been philosophy of religion. But that actually, made me ask a lot of questions, and sort of, I became curious and interested in getting to know who God was from there.
Do you recall maybe some of those first questions that might have entered your mind?
One of the bigger questions was just like, what is God, or who is God, and does he even exist? And if he does exist, how does he exist?
Mm.
And I don't remember like the exact arguments or anything, but I remember there was pretty good arguments for both sides of the debate.
Mm.
And it was just a great place to explore, both sides of the arguments on the existence of God.
Mm.
So that was interesting, because it felt like a really, a lot of people are intimidated by philosophy classes or just being in university classes. But it felt like a really kind of a neutral place. I think depending on your teacher too, can really sort of help you grow in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you guys met, Thomas, at the time, were you like part of the church at the time, or what was that state?
No, when we first met, so that would have been 2014. I definitely wasn't part of the church then. And I hadn't even really started taking philosophy classes. This was like at the very beginning of our academic careers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting, because there was actually, like, when we first met, there was a bit of a, like, although I think like we both felt compelled to talk to each other and get to know each other, but there was also a bit of a, almost like a invisible wall or barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was going through a lot of stuff. I was struggling a lot with my own life,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in a way God was kind of
Mm-hmm.
protecting our relationship there for a later time, when we actually, when we reconnected quite a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
We were both in a much healthier state to really get to know each other.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
This is like often a tough thing, because I don't feel we don't talk about enough, but when couples meet with different spiritual backgrounds, and even in the church, there are different spiritual backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first conversations are always a challenge, because like, how do you approach talking about your faith? So when you guys first met that first time, do you guys recall any conversations and how you broached the topic?
No, I don't recall. I have the worst memory, but I don't recall. And personally, for me, I try to keep it as natural as possible, and I don't try to enforce my religion or topic about God unless I see there's permission from the other person. So I was very, just myself and talking to him and just getting to know him. But I knew when he said the invisible wall, God told me, take care of him, protect him from yourself. And for myself, that was very different, because as I had my own struggles with guys and attention, and for God to say that so clearly, I'm in tears right now, but for God to say that so clearly, take care of this one, from yourself, I knew that this was something different. And so I held back a lot. And sorry, I'm trying to hold back my tears. So yeah, the short answer is no. We didn't talk about God.
Yeah, it wasn't until much later when we reconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that was a much healthier time for us to
Mm-hmm.
talk about that.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
yeah, no, I totally agree. It was as though when we reconnected in 2017, where God gave me the green light, and He's like, "You can now. You can get to know Him." Right. And so that's when those kind of conversations started happening, and I started talking more about God and about how important He is for me. And it just flowed so naturally, the topic of God and church and worship and singing. And ironically, we're both very musically inclined, so that also connected us even more through music. And so I guess he also felt like he could express his interest in God and like, who is He, and ask me questions about, why is God so important for you? So it was all in God's timing, basically, where first it was like we had to kind of set our own let's say demons and our own struggles in our lives, and heal from those experiences in order for God to be in the center of our relationship and truly be there without all the distractions and all the past traumas and pain that we both brought onto the table.
It's tough because, like, I'm sorry you guys reconnected, but like the vulnerability being exposed, and kind of, it sounds like when you both were vulnerable, you both were willing to talk about both sides of faith, like, because you probably got some of Thomas probably had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people have questions about Adventists, I think, generally speaking.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't try to sugarcoat my relationship with God, right? Even though I grew up in the church, I had a lot of struggles with my own personal relationship with God. At one point, I was very angry with God and I wanted nothing to do with Him. And it wasn't such a shameful thing to say, because I wanted Thomas to see that, yes, God is an amazing person, definitely you should have a relationship with Him, because your world and your life will change in ways that you've never seen it change before. But it's not the easiest thing, but it's the most rewarding thing that you can have. And so I was very vulnerable with Thomas about my life. And I think that a lot of people would kind of be scared of that, because they'd be like, wow, like she looks perfect on the outside, but wow, I thought Christians all had it together. And it's this like stigmatism, I feel, that when you are so involved with God and you have such a strong relationship with Him, that your life is not rocky and you never go through anything and everything is like a fairy tale. And so I think him seeing that about me, that I'm not fake, or I'm not just disingenuous or anything like that, was his desire to know about God in a more honest light than what some people may portray as, my life is great and I'm perfect and nothing ever goes wrong, kind of thing. Yeah.
Thomas, when you saw that, did anything surprise you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everything surprised me, because I honestly hadn't really experienced that, especially from somebody I'm really interested in, like Carolina. I was in love with her. I still am, right? And it was very surprising to me, because I'd never experienced that from my partner, or somebody I wanted to get to know that way.
I think what's challenging for many couples is like people intertwining their faiths, because it's not just one person's faith, it's two. How do you guys, kind of approach the merging of kind of both of your belief systems and your spirituality?
So what flowed for us was just allowing him to discover God on his own. And that was something that I've really prayed about in a partner, was for them to want to get to know God on their own and develop a relationship with God without my influence. And with him, it was like this spark started happening in him, and he started doing things on his own, reading. He's right now doing Bible studies with our other pastor, Pastor Colin, and I didn't know about that. I heard about it, but I didn't know that it had been happening already. And so I felt it just flowed, and it was just natural and easy. And there was no, come on, like you have to read the Bible kind of thing. And that's what I really loved about Thomas, was that I, that it was very genuine, his desire to know who God is, that I could share that with him, and he's passionate about it, and he wants to get to know him, and he wants a relationship. And so in all honesty, that's probably the best thing for that I could have wanted in a partner, is just somebody that I don't need to bring his hand and force him to come to church or force him to play in the band. It's all on him. And I love that. I think it's much easier than being with somebody that is so adamant about their religion and doesn't want to be open-minded about anything, and like, no, this is what I believe and that's it. And that, I believe, if Thomas was more rigid that way, then we would have probably had a lot of problems and a lot of conflict. And because sometimes I have been with somebody that was the opposite of that, where he was very adamant about being Catholic and no space to be open-minded, and basically wanted me to be Catholic or that's it. And obviously that didn't work. So I personally prayed for somebody like Thomas to just want to be in a relationship with God.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I was definitely, my beliefs were kind of more sort of up in the air. I was kind of, just exploring, trying to understand what everything meant to me. And and I think, I also brought some, like, we do have different beliefs as well, right? And I think still being able to have conversations about that, when your beliefs aren't always the same, it's still important and nice to be able to talk about that and kind of see where that goes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
no, that's what I love about Thomas. It's like he has his beliefs, but he's also very open-minded, and that's such a refreshing thing to see, because in our first encounters and when we were friends at the beginning, he did just that. He was a lot of debating, a lot of, why do you think this way? And, oh, really? Is that really what you think, kind of thing? And oh my gosh, he was the only person that has ever challenged me the way he has with my mind and my beliefs. And I was a lot more strict with my beliefs, and it was more rigid, but he just had a way of just really getting me to talk about it, and also being open to hearing the opposite and hearing different sides, and not one way is the right way, kind of thing.
So Thomas, when you started being involved in the church, were there particular things that were easier or more challenging? Because as new members, it's a lot of information. I mean,
yeah,
it's a lot of stuff. So how did you kind of process through a lot of that?
Yeah, it is a lot of stuff. So I would talk about things in the Bible with our pastor, and this helped to really have that sort of open discussion. And just kind of personalize, the messages in the Bible. And I really appreciate that, being able to read what's in the Bible and relate that to your own life. And I don't think it's so like, this is how it is. I think there's always a lot of room for interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what drew me so much to doing the Bible studies. And yeah, and part of what Carolina and I talk about to this day, we sometimes have different beliefs about what something will mean in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice being able to talk about that. And sometimes it's hard also, but I think it's important to ask those questions. And yeah.
Carolina, something that often happens, unfortunately, in I think Christian circles, is there's this expectation that the other person you're dating has to be Christian, and it's I kind of think it's a weird thing, because like the church always talks about growing, right? So it always makes sense to kind of pick what's in the circle. When you started pursuing this relationship, did you get any pressure from like family just saying that, or about the faith of who you're dating, or were they kind of hands off?
No, I got a lot of pressure from that for sure. Like, he has to be Adventist, he has to be this, and he has to be that. And I was a rebel. Okay, I didn't go by the books because of my own life story, and I felt like I also am not the perfect Adventist girl, right? So dating somebody that was quote unquote perfect Adventist guy, I felt like I would not measure up to him because my life was not perfect Christian girl. So even though I had that pressure, like he has to be this, I kind of just went with what God said to me. Like, don't worry about that, right? He was just like, don't worry about it. I got your guy, just don't worry about it. So for me, I'm glad that it was always the outside people saying those kind of pressuring things. But my own family, all they cared about is that somebody that was open to God, that wanted to go to church, that wants to share that with you. Because raising your kids in the church, raising them with values and a foundation that way is going to be easier for you, and it's also going to teach them things that the outside world unfortunately doesn't teach you sometimes. And I know Thomas can disagree, because he probably will. But for me, I don't go to church just for the sake of looking good. I genuinely just love going to church, and I want to bring that to my kids and show them that, being in church is a wonderful thing. You get to meet really great people. I'm so actively involved in church, have been since I was 18, 19. And so, yeah, long story short, I did get a lot of pressure. Did I follow them? No. Yeah.
Thomas, on your side, was there like any social pressures you had and expectations on who you would be dating, or was it different?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is something that's been pretty challenging. Like, as I mentioned, my family, pretty much all my family is not religious. So this took a lot of sort of, at times I just had to kind of be very firm with them and just tell them, like, this is what I'm doing now. And sorry, we're going our different ways, but that's just what happened. When I left my hometown at the age of 22 or so, I was sort of, left to my own devices to just kind of learn about the world, and that's what happened. So yeah, my family, has made it hard at times, but I think, people are always afraid of things they don't know or understand.
Yeah.
And I think they're also willing to kind of overcome that too, as they learn more about, what we're all about.
And also just showing them a lot of patience and compassion towards them. Like you said, some people are afraid of what they don't know, and so if I retaliate and show like an ugly side to myself, then it doesn't really reflect who God is. Because in the Bible with Jesus, where at first they loved him and then they all hated him, but he still showed the same love and the same person that he is. So for me, it's like going into those experiences or being involved around his family where religion is just not a topic you talk about, right? I just show them like God's love through me kind of thing. So it's not the most terrible thing or the most uncomfortable thing. It's just a way of showing them without showing them who God is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did, I guess, Thomas, when you had family gatherings your side or just interacting with your family, how often did the topic of religion come up, or was it just like a casual thing?
It would sort of come up here and there. I wouldn't say it was too popular or too common, but there's been times where it's like my parents, they have a lot of sort of I guess their beliefs about the churches and marriage too, even though they're both married. But so it definitely came up a bit. And like Carolina was saying, we're just kind of patient and just trying to show them that we mean the very best for each other. And we're not perfect. We're not trying to claim that we're perfect or that our church is perfect or anything like that. It's not what it's about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Inside the past couple of years, have there been particular faith-defining moments?
So for myself, I don't know if you read one of the words of hope or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was this sort of fictional story where this girl was sitting in a room with white walls and kind of contemplating whether she lives or not. That was me in the story. And to come in a bigger context, I was a little bit more reserved with the story, but if I'm being vulnerable and honest, I was in a really tough time in my life. I was about 21 and no, 2021. And I had attempted suicide actually. And that was when I hated God and I wanted nothing to do with him. And I was, still adamant about living my own life the way I wanted to, but everything kind of kept spiraling out of control. And I ended up in a hospital for about 3 weeks. And I remember sitting on the bed and I heard God's voice for the first time very clearly. And he said, "Well, you're here." And I responded, "Yep, I'm here." And he said to me, "Well, do you like where you're at?" And I said, "Nope, I don't." And he's like, "Well, you have two options. You either trust me or that's it." And I questioned him. I'm like, "Do I really have a choice?" And he said, "Nope, you don't." And I was like, fine, I guess I have no other option. It's either death or it's you. So I choose you, I guess. And he said to me, "Well, just you wait, that in a couple of years, you won't recognize who you are anymore." And I said, yeah, we'll see about that. And then he repeated himself, and I obviously left the hospital. And that's kind of when it all started for me. So that was my faith defining moment, that I just, and it started really small, like very small things. I struggled with self-image, body, self-esteem, boys, you name it, just absolutely everything. I was just a complete mess. But I was also leading up at church. I was leading worship at church and portraying this person. And so he started very slowly with me, and my trust in him started growing little by little. And then it became bigger things. And to point where I finally understood what fearing God meant, and that it wasn't such a scary thing. It's actually the best thing that you could do for yourself, that you put your life so much on a person and you don't have to worry about anything. And that no matter who comes into your life, or no matter what comes into your life, there is that one person that loves you no matter what, and will never leave you nor forsake you. And yeah, that was basically it. And ever since that, he's proven to me every single day that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thomas?
Yeah, mine wasn't, I don't think, as sort of revealing, or maybe it was, but maybe still a bit of an unknown to me. But yeah, these like life or death experiences, that's kind of what I experienced too, right? And I got to such an unhealthy place in my life where I was struggling with mental health and physical health. And I would try to like keep a regular running routine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd often go out in like there's like a little forest nearby. It was kind of like my ritual. And but I was in such an unhealthy state. And I remember, this was the only time that I actually prayed to God and asked him, to just, help me find my way and help me just be healthy. I want to live a healthy life, right? And that's kind of what I asked him for. And I'm not sure. I mean, this was my rock bottom, where I just felt like there was basically no hope. I didn't want to give up, but I felt like I couldn't go on. And I just felt like things weren't going to get better. And then, after that, I just started recovering and started getting healthier each day. I wasn't, struggling with any addictions or anything like that. I don't know, something just like switched, in me. And to this day, I really can't say exactly what it is, other than I just experienced, so much pain and just, I just wanted the hell out of there, so, so that was my last call, was just asking for health and forgiveness.
Yeah, thank you for that story also. Do you have advice for other couples? Because I think there's a lot of couples in the church who are even the same faith, different faith. I think the uniform thing is we approach God, but how we do that, different communication strategies. Do you have any advice for other couples, as maybe some are starting to date, some have been in church for a while? Anything that has worked for you guys?
Well, one thing, and this was actually advice given to me as well. And it's just basically, no matter how intense or how challenging, an argument or debate or how mad you get at each other. Just still reminding yourself and remembering that, you're for each other, and even though times are rough, you have to remember that that's your partner, and nothing is gonna break you up. So for me, it's been like, if we keep a count, or if we keep track of our struggles or debates or whatever, and this is only gonna, it's easy to use that as a reason to be like, okay, this isn't working. But you got to have the opposite mindset and be like, okay, so how can we make this work, or what needs to change, and how can we improve? It's always about improving. And it's so easy to do the opposite and think of it as a negative.
Yeah. And also probably the biggest and most important advice, and the most truest advice, probably not the word truest, but keep God in the center of both your own relationship with him, like individually, but also your relationship as a couple. Without that, I'm sorry, your relationship will not succeed. And it was the most honest advice I've ever received. And to this day, every relationship that I had prior to Thomas was just, it just didn't work out. It was very, very destructive, very unhealthy. And it was not until I put God in the center of our relationship where things started to just make sense. And with any couple, new or old, is keep God in the center. Don't forget about him. He is the reason why you guys came together in the first place. So don't leave him out of that, right? And it just rings true, like the fact that we're able to share music together and worship together and find those common grounds as well, is why our relationship is thriving the way it is. Why, even though there have been things in our lives that could have torn us apart and could have broken us up by now, it's as though God has protected us from all of that because we've intentionally put him in the center of our relationship. And so, yeah, pray together, make sure God is in every decision that you make as a couple, and never stop thanking God for this opportunity that he has given to you to learn what God's love is through your partner, because that is honestly, I don't want to cry. Sorry. God.
It's okay, take your
time. He really has shown me his love through Thomas. And yeah, so yep, I think that's all I can say.
I would also like to add, just being like intentionally sharing things has been super helpful for us. Just pretty much being like an open book. I mean, that's worked really well for us. It might not be necessary for everybody. Some people are different, but I just think being able to be that open with your partner, it allows a different type of connection.
For sure.
Yeah, and I often ask myself, like, what would Jesus do, right? It sounds kind of cliche, but it's such a good question. And it's often those hard choices we make that are the most important ones.
Mhm.
With that, I'd like to thank both of you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to OAC Vancouver's podcast. Learn more at oacvancouver.ca. If you're in Vancouver, join us for worship Saturdays at 11 a.m. at 5350 Bailey Street. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. God bless you and have a wonderful day.